Breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court has sent shockwaves through the nation. A groundbreaking ruling was just issued, overturning a long-standing policy and compelling a dramatic shift in direction. For years, this policy provided left-leaning governments and politicians with the latitude to enact changes that critics argue have contributed to the decline of many cities. This ruling marks a pivotal moment, potentially reshaping the way policies are implemented moving forward. A monumental decision from the Supreme Court's conservative majority has just upended a cornerstone of administrative law. For 40 years, the Chevron doctrine allowed federal agencies to interpret vague laws, with courts often deferring to these agency interpretations if deemed reasonable. This approach, however, stood at odds with the Administrative Procedures Act, which explicitly states that courts, not agencies, are responsible for resolving statutory ambiguities. By overturning the Chevron doctrine, the court has reshaped the balance of power between agencies and the judiciary, setting a new precedent for how laws will be interpreted moving forward. A pivotal Supreme Court decision traces its origins to two related cases, where petitioners took a stand against federal agency rulings. At the forefront was the recently resolved Grants Pass, Oregon case, drawing national attention. Back in 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a landmark ruling in Martin versus Boise. This decision declared that cities cannot criminalize individuals for sleeping in public spaces when adequate shelter beds are unavailable. The judges emphasized that charging someone under such circumstances violates the Eighth Amendment, which protects against cruel and unusual punishment. This case set a powerful precedent that continues to shape legal debates today. Frustrated by the ruling, Boise sought a second chance by asking the full Ninth Circuit to reconsider, but their request was denied. Taking their fight to the next level, Boise petitioned the Supreme Court for review, only to face rejection there as well. Meanwhile, the Blake versus Grants Pass case emerged in 2018, spearheaded initially by Deborah Blake. After her passing in 2021, Gloria Johnson stepped in to continue the legal battle. In 2022, a three-judge panel from the Ninth Circuit upheld a lower court's decision, compelling Grants Pass to cease enforcing its ban on homeless individuals sleeping on public property. Grants Pass mirrored Boise's efforts, appealing to the full Ninth Circuit, only to be met with a detailed 155-page order explaining why the court refused to revisit the case until now. Overturning the Chevron doctrine is not without significant consequences. This decision paves the way for a wave of litigation, potentially reshaping how laws are interpreted in critical areas like environmental protection, public lands management, healthcare, taxation, and emerging technologies. By shifting interpretive authority to the judiciary, the ruling disrupts the balance of power among government branches. This fundamental change raises questions about how future policies will be shaped and enforced across the nation. The origins of the Chevron doctrine trace back to a 1984 case involving disputes over the Clean Air Act. In that landmark ruling, the Supreme Court affirmed the principle of deferring to agency expertise when interpreting ambiguous statutes. This precedent empowered agencies to adapt regulations in response to evolving scientific insights and shifting circumstances. Without Chevron to guide deference, the responsibility for interpreting laws now shifts entirely to judges. This change raises concerns about the possibility of inconsistent regulatory standards emerging across various jurisdictions. Homelessness offers a stark example of the broader impact of recent rulings. California, bearing the brunt of these challenges, places Governor Gavin Newsom in a position where critical decisions must be made. Signs of accountability appear to be emerging in the state, where the crisis has reached alarming levels. The Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report revealed that 653,000 people across the U.S. are experiencing homelessness this year. California stands out with the highest percentage of unsheltered individuals. 68% of its homeless population lacks shelter. In real numbers, that's 123,456 people living without a roof over their heads. Neighboring states like Oregon, Hawaii, Arizona, and Nevada also face significant struggles, though California remains at the epicenter of the crisis. Per capita homelessness rates across the United States reveal an intriguing pattern. Housing costs, rather than mental illness, drug addiction, or poverty, play the most significant role in driving acknowledging these variations. Megan Henry, project director for the annual Homeless Assessment Report, highlighted California's worsening housing crisis as a primary factor in its soaring homelessness numbers. According to Henry, three critical issues lie at the heart of the problem: skyrocketing housing costs, stagnant wages, and deeply ingrained systemic racism. These factors, she explained, continue to compound the challenges faced by vulnerable populations, making sustainable solutions increasingly difficult to achieve. A 2021 HUD report revealed a staggering figure: 8.53 million renters across the nation teeter on the edge of homelessness. This rate has nearly doubled over the past 20 years, painting a grim picture of housing instability. These vulnerable households earn less than 50% of their area's median income, lack access to government housing assistance, and face crushing financial burdens, spending over half their income on rent or enduring severely inadequate living conditions. The data underscores the growing urgency of addressing this crisis. San Francisco once stood as one of the most stunning cities in the nation, if not the world. Today, many of its neighborhoods tell a very different story, with scenes that are nearly unrecognizable compared to their former glory. The level of decline is truly shocking for a city once celebrated for its beauty and vibrancy. Conditions have deteriorated so drastically that it has earned the nickname Mini Tent City, drawing comparisons to similar struggles faced by areas in Seattle. Some left-wing politicians have pointed to the Ninth Circuit Court's decision as a convenient scapegoat, arguing that it prevents them from addressing the explosion of homeless encampments. Among those most entangled in this narrative is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Time and again, he has leaned on this ruling as a primary defense for the state's ongoing homelessness crisis. Over the past 6 years, this explanation has become a recurring theme in his interviews and debate appearances whenever the question arises: why does California face such an overwhelming homelessness problem? The latest data from the 2024 point-in-time count paints a sobering picture. 8,323 people are currently experiencing homelessness in San Francisco. Among them, 3,969 have found refuge in shelters, while the majority remain unsheltered. Compared to 2022, when the homeless population stood at 7,756, the city has witnessed a 7.3% increase in just 2 years. This upward trend highlights the escalating challenges San Francisco faces in addressing its homelessness crisis. Governor Newsom frequently highlighted California's multi-billion-dollar investments in combating homelessness, claiming that court rulings tied the hands of state and local governments. According to him, these decisions created roadblocks, preventing encampment clearances and delaying critical services for those in need. He insisted that only intervention from the Supreme Court could put an end to the costly lawsuits hindering progress. That argument, however, no longer holds. In a major development, the Supreme Court has ruled that cities are now permitted to enforce bans on outdoor sleeping, effectively removing this long-standing excuse. Grants Pass, Oregon, a picturesque city nestled among mountains, became the focal point of a significant legal battle. Residents grew concerned as homeless encampments started taking over their local city park, disrupting the charm and tranquility of their community. Being a smaller city, the presence of these encampments had a noticeable impact on everyone. Efforts to address the issue were met with resistance from the state's liberal governor, who argued that intervening would violate the law. Refusing to back down, the city took legal action, setting the stage for a case that eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court. Last Friday, a landmark Supreme Court ruling granted Grants Pass and every city across the nation the authority to remove homeless encampments. This decision effectively overturned the Ninth Circuit's earlier stance, which had labeled such actions as cruel and unusual punishment. By clarifying the legal framework, the court opened the door for cities to enforce bans on outdoor sleeping, even in situations where no shelter space is available. This ruling marks a significant shift in how local governments can address homelessness moving forward. The ruling is poised to dramatically alter the way cities and states across the western United States handle homelessness. Left-wing politicians, especially governors in northwestern states such as Washington, Oregon, and California, can no longer rely on the Ninth Circuit's decision as a justification for permitting or supporting homeless encampments. For leaders like Gavin Newsom, this marks the end of a convenient defense and signals a potential shift in accountability for addressing the crisis head-on. No longer can they argue that their hands are tied. This decision brings attention to the staggering amount of time and taxpayer money squandered on ineffective programs claiming to address homelessness and its inequities. These initiatives, often presented as solutions, have proven to be little more than an expensive illusion. The ruling underscores the need for meaningful action rather than costly studies that fail to produce real results. Politicians have often engaged in actions that appear more performative than than effective. Governor Gavin Newsom's administration, for instance, allocated approximately $24 billion to study homelessness inequities. However, that massive sum has seemingly disappeared without a trace. According to a report from the state auditor released last month, California is unable to account for over $24 billion spent on homelessness programs during Newsom's 5-year tenure. It's a staggering revelation, leaving many to wonder how such an enormous amount of taxpayer money could simply vanish. An audit revealed troubling findings about 5 programs funded with $13.7 billion. Among them, only 2 appear to deliver value for the money spent. One initiative focuses on converting hotels and motels into housing, while the other supports families in staying housed to prevent homelessness. The Hotel and Motel Conversion Program, a cornerstone of Governor Newsom's homelessness strategy, accounted for $3.6 billion. This approach proves far more cost-effective than building new housing, with conversions being at least 2.5 times cheaper per unit compared to new construction. On top of everything else, California is grappling with a $50 billion deficit, a gap that highlights the state's inability to balance its spending with its revenue. Falling $50 billion short has left the state struggling to pay its bills without resorting to tax hikes or additional borrowing. Despite this financial turmoil, Governor Newsom is positioning himself for a potential leap to the national stage. As a White House contender on the short list of potential candidates, his track record of failed policies and fiscal mismanagement raises serious questions about his leadership ambitions. California continues to lead the nation in homelessness, accounting for a staggering 28% of the country's homeless population. Since Governor Newsom took office, this crisis has nearly doubled in scale. One small bright spot has been a decline in veteran homelessness, until recently. In 2023, that progress took a sharp turn, with veteran homelessness rising by 7.4%. This increase marks a troubling reversal of a 12-year trend, during which the VA had celebrated a 55% reduction in veteran homelessness nationwide over the past decade. Veteran homelessness in California has seen a 17.8% reduction over time, yet 2023 brought an unwelcome 6% increase. Earlier this year, the VA reported placing 46,500 veterans into permanent housing, exceeding its target of 38,000. Governor Newsom points to these figures as evidence that the system is delivering results. However, the rising number of homeless individuals living on California streets raises a pressing question. Can the same claim be made for the broader homelessness crisis plaguing the state? Big changes are on the horizon for California streets with the removal of the Chevron doctrine, a legal precedent that Governor Newsom often cited as a limitation. This shift grants state and local leaders greater freedom to address the homelessness crisis without the constraints of previous court rulings. Whether this newfound authority will translate into meaningful action remains to be seen. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about these changes? Share your opinions in the comments below and let's keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update when we upload new content.